Alright, in this video we are going to be going through 3.5, or I'm going to be going through the 5 number summary and box plots. So this should be relatively quick, not a whole lot going on here. Let's go ahead and look at what we mean by the 5 number summary. So the 5 number summary consists of the smallest data value, the first quartile, the median, the third quartile, and the largest data value. The 5 number summary is as follows. And so you have your minimum and Q1, the median, the quartile 3, and the maximum. Notice it wouldn't be hard to find the interquartile range because you can easily subtract Q3 and Q1. Now, just a real quick tip here, we'll usually use StatCrunch to find this information for the 5 number summary, and I'll show you how to do that a little bit later. But the 5 number summary gives us a really nice way to describe a distribution using only 5 numbers, and it really does tell us quite a bit. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next slide and look at an example. So here we have the 5 numbers, an example for the 5 number summary. You've got a group of Brigham Young University of Idaho students collected data on the speed of vehicles traveling through a construction zone on a state highway where the posted construction speed limit was 25. The recorded speeds for 14 randomly selected vehicles are given below. And so you can see there's 14 pieces of data and it's already been ordered. And so I've already picked out the minimum value and the maximum value. The median, since there's 2 numbers in the middle, I took the average of 32 and 33, or what I should call the mean, and you get 32.5. And basically half the data is below that and half the data is above that. And that's where we'll find the quartile 1 and 3. So it's basically the median of the lower half of the data that's below the median. And so there's 7 values here, so it's going to be 28. And the same thing here, 7 values, and 38 is the middle value there. And so our 5 number summary is written this way: 20, 28, 32.5, 38, and 40. And so we just write the numbers out and put some space in between, and people that are doing statistics know what those 5 numbers mean. So let's go ahead and move on to drawing a box plot. So if you've printed out these notes, you can refer to them as I'm drawing a box plot. I will refer back to this, but I'm not going to read these to you. You can do that on your own. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Now notice it does say to start by finding the lower and upper fences, and so we'll get on that pretty quick. So we're doing the same problem, or I should say we're working with the same data, and we're going to draw a box plot. Now I've already done that, so just kind of ignore that for now. But basically our first step was to find the lower and upper fences, so we need the IQR. So I found that up here. If you subtract Q3 and Q1, you get 10. And so the lower fence is Q1 minus 1.5 times the IQR. And if you plug in your numbers, you get 13. And for the upper fence, if you find that, you have to find Q3 plus 1.5 times IQR. So if you do the math here, you should get 53. So notice none of our data is lower than 13, our lower fence, and none of our data is above our upper fence, 53. And so in this case, you can see there are no outliers. And so now we're ready to draw the box plot. So it says draw a number line long enough to include the minimum and maximum values. So let's go ahead and focus on this now. So I went from 0 to 60 because I wanted to make sure I covered my fence values. This is kind of arbitrary. You might have chosen your numbers a little different. Maybe you went to 55 or somewhere around there. You just want to make sure it's long enough for what you're going to put on there. So notice in the directions it said insert vertical lines at Q1, the median, and Q3. So Q1 was 28, which is about here, and I drew a vertical line right here for Q1. I did the same thing for the median, which was 32.5. So that's about 35. I went halfway there. And so that's your median. And then I drew this line here. That was at about 38, which is QR, or Q3. And then I just drew the box in, the lower and the upper line here. And so the next step was to label the lower and upper fences with brackets. So we really don't need to do this step, but I'll do it anyway, and then we'll erase it. So 13, we have a fence. So we just draw a bracket, and at 53. So the main thing is we're looking to see if there's any outliers, and we said there aren't any. And so we'll end up erasing these fences. The next step on number 5 is to draw the whiskers to the minimum and maximum value. So our minimum value was 20. So we started at 20 and we went from there to the middle of the box here. And the same thing over here, I went from Q3 to 40, our maximum value. Now in some books, and I noticed in StatCrunch, they do put a little line here and also here. But the directions in this book were to draw just like that. I'm going to go ahead and erase my fences. And so that is my box plot. Now let's discuss how to do this in StatCrunch. So anytime we do graphs, we go to Graph, and you're going to select Box Plot. And then there's, you're going to have to select your column, the column where your data is. And then there's two boxes that you're going to want to check. One is use fences to identify outliers. And I believe this one will already be checked, but if not, check it. And then draw boxes horizontally. You'll need to make sure that's checked as well. So we'll do that shortly. Let's go ahead and go to the next page, and I'll show you what it looks like in StatCrunch. And so it looks very similar to what we did. You can compare it to what we just did. It's pretty much the same. Let's go ahead. Mine doesn't look quite as nice as that one though. I want to go back to something we looked at in section 3.4. So here's some box plot images where here the data is left skewed, here you have right skewed data, and here you're symmetrical. So it's not skewed either way. So generally speaking, with symmetrical type of data, we tend to use a bell-shaped curve. Not always, but that's kind of the tendency. When our data is right or left skewed, box plots and IQRs could be very helpful in analyzing that kind of data. And so we tend to do that. The IQR is a lot more important when we're dealing with skewed data. And we talked about previously how if you subtract M minus Q1 and you compare that with Q3 minus M, the bigger value will tell you which way the graph is skewed. So notice you would have a bigger number here, the difference in these two numbers, which indicates that you're skewed left. And you can see that. Notice you have these outliers way out here, and the data is distributed here. It's a lot more spread out, whereas on the other side, the upper, to the right of the median, it's a lot more, concentrated. And similarly with right skewed, notice this difference will be bigger. So Q3 minus M would be the bigger number, and so that's how you know that you're right skewed. All right, so I just want to mention one more thing before we go to StatCrunch. We also have what are called side-by-side box plots. I'll try to make this just a little bigger. So here they're comparing the age of MVP recipients in the NFL or the NHL versus the NBA. I know that's a little hard to read. And this is by age. And so you can see how the ages compare. of the different recipients for the NHL and the NBA. So you can compare data that way using a side-by-side box plot. And in the homework, you'll have to do a graph for one of these, and I'm going to show you that. So let's go ahead and go to StatCrunch. And so let me see if I can do this. All right, so there's the data that we've been working with, the miles per hour. And if we wanted to get just the 5 number summary, we could go to Summary Stats, Columns. We'll select the column here, VAR1, and we'll select what we need. Well, that would be, let's see, it's a little bit hard to do this. Let me use this little thing. So we need the median. I'm going to hold Control, and then we need the minimum. And again, use this little bar to get yourself down. We need the maximum, Q1 and Q3. And let's go ahead and hit Compute. And so there they are. So that's how we can quickly get our 5 number summary. Now what about the graph? Well, we can go to Graph, and we said box plot. We'll choose our column, VAR1 in this case. You can always label your columns, especially if you're going to print out your diagram. So remember, we want these 2 boxes checked. Use fences to identify outliers and draw boxes horizontally. And that's all we need to do. And you guys can't see, I need to move this up. There we go. Compute. And there's our box plot. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the homework. And I wanted to show you this problem here. Uh-oh, my session ended, so I get to do this all over again. Oh, let's see, boy, I don't, might be in trouble here. Let me see if this will work. We'll find out in a second. Let's click on Open in StatCrunch. Oh, good. All right, so I want to show you something. Notice the name brand, they're using N, and the store brand, they're using S. And what you'll find, let's go back to our data. Oops, wrong one. Let's see, it's this one here. Let me make this just a little bigger. You can cover up that other one. Okay, so this is N and this is S, and it turns out if you graph it in this order, you end up having them in the opposite order. And so what I did is I used S for store brand, just like they did, and I used N for name brand, and I copied, oops, this column. So you can do Control C, and then put it in this column and hit Control V, or just copy and paste. And so that way, I'm going to choose these 2 columns, and you'll find that it makes it look like the graph that you're going to see in MyStatLab. Okay, so now we're ready to do the graph. So we're going to go to box plot. We're going to choose these 2 columns here, not the first one. And again, we want to pick these 2 options here, and let's go ahead and compute. And so now, let's see if I can do this. This is a challenge. So I need to compare this to my answers, which are, where are they? Right there. Boy, am I going to be able to see both? We'll find out in a second. There we go. Okay. And so now we can compare these to see which one is the right one. Now, one thing you'll find is our scale is a little bit different. Notice it starts at 15, and theirs starts right at 10. And so let's see, we started at 20 with this box here, so that one's not right. It's either this one or this one. And if you look at the tails, this one's pretty much even on both ends, and you got a small tail on the left here. So let's go ahead, and I'm thinking it looks like it's this one here. So let's go ahead and click there, and there you go. All right, so that's the end of this video. I hope that helps.